They ignored him for years until he inherited $15 million. 1. Leaving home. From as early as I can remember, I felt like an outsider in my own family. My father left when I was just 5, and it was just Mom and me against the world, or so I thought. We struggled through tough times, but we were together, clinging to each other like two survivors in a storm. Everything changed when Tom entered our lives. Mom met him at a work event, and within months, they were inseparable. He was the kind of man who radiated authority. Clean-cut, successful, with a voice that could fill a room. For my mom, he was the answer to years of uncertainty, the promise of stability she'd been yearning for. For me, he was the beginning of my life unraveling. We moved into his house a few months after their wedding. It wasn't just a house, it was a sprawling suburban estate. Manicured lawns, sparkling windows, furniture so pristine you were afraid to touch it. It was everything we'd never had, yet as beautiful as it didn't feel like home. Tom didn't waste time establishing his rules. He wasn't outright cruel, but he was cold, calculating, and precise. My room had to be spotless, the dishes done before anyone could see them in the sink, the TV off by 10 p.m. sharp. At first I tried to keep the peace, but it quickly became clear that these rules weren't for everyone. His son Alex, a year younger than me, seemed to exist in a parallel reality where none of this applied. Alex was the golden child, charismatic, athletic, and always the center of attention. Teachers loved him, his friends idolized him, and his father couldn't stop bragging about him. It didn't take long for Alex to decide that tormenting me was his new favorite hobby. He had a knack for making his insults sound like jokes, so even when I wanted to defend myself, it felt like I'd just make myself look worse. Mom, meanwhile, was caught up in the whirlwind of her new life. When I tried to tell her about the way Tom treated me or how Alex made me feel like I didn't belong, she would sigh and say, "Ben, you're too sensitive. Just give it time," but time only made things worse. 2. The invisible boy. Things went from bad to worse when my half-brother Liam was born. Suddenly, all the attention in the house revolved around the baby. Liam was Tom's pride and joy, the glue that bound their family together. And me? I was just there. Every moment in that house reminded me of my place. Family dinners became unbearable. I'd sit at the edge of the table, watching as everyone doted on Liam, laughed at Alex's jokes, or listened to Tom talk about work. I might as well have been a shadow. Tom's criticisms escalated. Now it wasn't just about the house rules, it was about me as a person. "Why can't you be more like Alex?" he'd say. "You're almost an adult, Ben. Start acting like it." Alex, of course, took every opportunity to rub it in. When no one was looking, he'd whisper things like, "You're never going to be part of this family," or "They're just waiting for you to move out." At school, he made sure everyone knew I was the awkward, unwanted stepbrother. Even the small moments of joy I tried to carve out for myself seemed to vanish. I used to love drawing. It was the one thing that helped me escape. But Tom would scoff at my sketches, calling them a waste of time. By the time I turned 18, I felt like I'd been erased. My presence in that house was tolerated at best. I knew I couldn't stay. 3. Running to freedom. The day I left was quiet and unceremonious. I'd saved up from a part-time job at the local diner, enough for a deposit on a dingy studio apartment downtown. I packed my things into a few boxes, loaded them into my beat-up car, and drove off without looking back. Mom stood at the door as I left. She didn't cry, didn't beg me to stay. She just said, "Call me when you get there," and went back inside. The apartment was a far cry from Tom's polished suburban home. The wallpaper was peeling, the pipes groaned every time I turned on the faucet, and the furniture was all secondhand. But for the first time in years, I felt free. I took a job at a grocery store to make ends meet. It was grueling, thankless work, but I didn't mind. At least I didn't have to answer to Tom or listen to Alex's snide remarks. My manager, Jason, was one of the first people to treat me like I mattered. He was in his 50s, a gruff but kind man who'd seen it all. He taught me more than just how to stack shelves and handle customers. He showed me what it meant to work hard and hold your head high, no matter what life threw at you. Still, a loneliness crept in at night. There were times I'd stare at the cracked ceiling of my apartment, wondering if I'd made a mistake. 4. The unexpected inheritance. A year later, just as I was starting to find my footing, everything changed with one phone call. "Mr. Bennett," the voice on the other end said, "I'm calling on behalf of Rose Bennett's estate." The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. The lawyer explained that Rose had been a distant relative, my father's aunt, someone I'd met only a handful of times as a child. She had no children of her own, and to everyone's surprise, she'd left her entire estate to me. I thought it must have been a mistake, but when the lawyer listed the details, her properties, investments, and accounts, it was undeniable. The total was staggering $15 million. For a while, it didn't feel real. I kept expecting someone to call and say, "Actually, we've made an error," but the money was mine, and for the first time in my life, I had a real shot at building something for myself. 5. Family tensions rise. News travels fast in families, especially when money is involved. It didn't take long for Tom, Alex, and even Mom to start calling. Suddenly, I wasn't the forgotten stepchild anymore. "Ben, you know how hard things have been for us lately," Mom said in one of her first calls. "It would mean so much if you could help us with Liam's college fund." Tom was more direct. "I think it's only fair that you share some of that inheritance with the family that raised you," he said, his voice dripping with Fox concern. Alex, predictably, played the victim. "Man, I've been going through a tough time. A little help would go a long way," he said, as if we ever been close. I was polite at first, but firm. "This money doesn't change what happened," I told them. "It's not my responsibility to fix things for you." When they realized I wouldn't budge, Tom and Alex resorted to legal threats. They claimed they had a right to the inheritance, arguing that I was part of the family and therefore obligated to share. Thankfully, the lawyer who handled Rose's estate was prepared. He shut down their claims swiftly, leaving no room for argument. 6. A new chapter. With the legal battles behind me, I focused on building a life that was truly mine. I invested some of the inheritance, but more importantly, I used it to support causes I believed in, youth programs, shelters for at-risk teens, and art education initiatives. I also found people who genuinely cared about me. Jason became a mentor, and through him, I met Jade, a fiercely independent woman who became like a sister to me. Together with my old friend Nathan, they formed a support system I'd never had before. As for my biological family, I've kept my distance. When they occasionally try to reach out, I'm polite but firm. My life is no longer theirs to intrude upon. Now I wake up every day in a home I love, surrounded by people who see me for who I am, not for what I can give them. For the first time, I feel like I belong. Ben's story is a reminder that even when life feels stacked against you, there's always a chance to start over. Sometimes the family you choose is the one that saves you.